Earth had always been a quiet planet, hidden away on the fringes of the galaxy. To the galaxy's mighty empires, it was nothing more than a speck of dust in the vastness of space. For centuries, humanity had reached for the stars, but their technology was primitive by galactic standards. Yet, all of that was about to change. It began on a distant moon, located far beyond Earth's outermost colonies. A deep space mining operation led by the United Earth Federation had been scouring the moon for resources, rare metals essential for humanity's fledgling space industry. The crew, led by Commander Evelyn Kane, wasn't expecting anything extraordinary. But as their drills punched deep into the surface, they struck something far beyond their wildest imaginations. A massive metallic object, buried centuries, if not millennia, beneath the moon's crust. The object was smooth, almost otherworldly, with intricate markings etched into its surface. It hummed with a strange energy, dormant yet alive. Commander Kane's first instinct was to report the discovery to Earth Command, but something about the artifact seemed to call to her. She ordered a small team to investigate further. It didn't take long for the team to realize the object was no ordinary relic. It was a massive repository of advanced technology, unfathomably ancient, yet strangely familiar in design. Kane, despite her scientific training, felt a growing sense of dread as they unearthed it. Every scan revealed data far more advanced than anything humanity had ever encountered. It was clear that this artifact had the power to change everything. As the days passed, Kane and her team deciphered more of the artifact's secrets. They discovered an energy source that could power entire fleets of ships, weapons capable of tearing through entire armadas, and even vast databases of star charts, some of which hinted at forgotten civilizations that once roamed the stars. But the more they uncovered, the more the artifact seemed to respond to them, as if it were awakening after a long slumber. The once dormant object began to hum with energy, and that's when they made a grave mistake. In their eagerness, they activated the artifact's core, an action that sent a pulse of energy across the galaxy. At first, there was no immediate consequence. Earth continued as usual, but deep within the alien empires, something stirred. The pulse was detected by civilizations far beyond humanity's reach, civilizations that had long since written off Earth as a primitive, insignificant species. Now, they knew humanity was no longer helpless. The Xylox Empire, known for its technological dominance and militaristic prowess, was the first to respond. Its advanced warships, capable of wiping out entire planets, turned their gaze toward Earth. From their vast starbase on the edge of the galaxy, the Xylox High Command sent a fleet to investigate the pulse. They believed it to be a threat to their dominance. What they didn't know was that the humans had just awakened their greatest weapon, and with it, they would fight for their place among the stars. As the fleet turned toward Earth, Commander Kane stood on the edge of a new era for humanity. She gazed at the artifact, knowing that nothing would ever be the same again. The galaxy was about to learn just how dangerous humanity could be. But first, they would need to survive. The hum of Earth's atmosphere felt almost deafening in contrast to the eerie silence of space. Above Earth, the fleet of the Xylox Empire had arrived. They moved like a storm, sleek ships that appeared both ancient and unfathomably advanced, their weapons powered by energy sources far beyond anything humanity had ever imagined. The pulse sent from the artifact had not only alerted them, but drawn them to Earth as their next conquest. Their orders were clear: investigate and neutralize any potential threat to their reign. The first few hours were filled with tense anticipation. Back on Earth, Commander Evelyn Kane stood in the command center of the United Earth Fleet, staring at the holographic display showing the alien ships closing in. They had only days to prepare, and the task seemed impossible. Her forces were outnumbered by the Xyloxes 10-1. Worse yet, they had no idea just how much firepower the alien fleet could unleash. "We're outmatched, Commander," her second-in-command, Lieutenant Rahan Smithy, said grimly, his voice tight with worry. "Even with the artifact's technology, We're not ready for this. We'll be wiped out before we even have a chance." Kane clenched her jaw. The weight of humanity's future rested on her shoulders, and she could feel the anxiety ripple through the fleet's ranks. But she refused to give in to despair. "We may be outnumbered," Kane said, her voice cold with determination. "But we have something they don't, our ingenuity. We fight smarter, not harder. The artifact gave us the tools. Now we'll make them work for us." As the first Psylocke ship fired its opening salvo, the entire Earth defense fleet sprang into motion. Their warships, sleek, newly forged in the fires of humanity's desperation, engaged, firing beams of energy that crackled across space. At first, the humans were on the defensive, dodging incoming fire and trying to find any weak points in the massive Psylocke ships. But then something incredible happened. Aboard the flagship of Earth's fleet, the Vanguard, Kane's tactical genius began to shine. She deployed an unexpected maneuver, using their limited knowledge of the Psylocke ship's design and the alien technology integrated into humanity's ships. The human ships broke formation, scattering into unpredictable, erratic trajectories, drawing the alien ships into a disorienting chase. All ships fire in synchronized bursts. "Target their weapon systems," Kane ordered. The human warships, now utilizing the energy weapons from the artifact, fired with pinpoint precision, targeting the critical components of the Psylocke fleet's flagship. The massive alien vessel, caught off guard by the unorthodox tactic, began to take damage. The shockwaves from the weapons hit harder than the Psylocke had anticipated, rattling their shields and destabilizing their targeting systems. The humans were not just holding their ground, they were winning. Moments later, a critical hit to the Psylocke flagship's power core caused a violent explosion. The colossal ship ruptured, breaking apart in the vacuum of space, sending debris scattering through the vast expanse. A stunned silence filled the command center of Earth's fleet. The flagship of the Psylocke Empire, destroyed by a species once considered incapable of anything beyond survival. "We did it," Lieutenant Smith whispered, his eyes wide with disbelief. "We actually did it." Commander Kane stood motionless, staring at the wreckage of the alien warship, her mind racing. This was more than just a victory. It was a declaration. Humanity was no longer a helpless, insignificant species. The galaxy had just learned what it meant to underestimate Earth. But before they could celebrate, Kane's screen flickered with an urgent message from the outer rim of the system. Another Psylocke fleet, far larger, was already en route. This was only the beginning. The victory over the Psylocke fleet had sent ripples through the galaxy, the shockwaves reaching the farthest corners of space. On Earth, celebrations were brief. There was no time to revel in their success. The true battle was just beginning. Commander Evelyn Kane stood on the bridge of the Vanguard, staring out at the expanse of space. The remnants of the Psylocke flagship were still drifting slowly toward Earth's orbit, a grim reminder of the force they had just defied. Her mind was focused on the next move. The Psylocke were not the only threat out there. Earth had made an impression, but now the question was how the rest of the galaxy would react. "We've barely scratched the surface, Commander," said Lieutenant Smithy, his voice betraying a growing sense of unease. "The Psylocke won't let this slide. And there are other empires out there, ones we haven't even begun to contend with." "We won't be caught off guard again," Kane replied, her gaze hardening. "The Psylocke will be back, but we've shown them what we're capable of. Now we need to prepare for what's coming. We need to make alliances, strengthen our defenses, and learn everything we can from that artifact." The artifact, the key to their victory, was humanity's greatest asset, but also its greatest mystery. It had given them the technology to stand up to the Psylocke, but what else did it hold? What more could they uncover? The more they examined it, the stranger it became. It wasn't just a weapon. It was something far older and more complex, something that hinted at a much larger, forgotten history of the universe. As Earth scrambled to unlock more of the artifact's secrets, the galaxy began to react. The Ventress Collective, a race of insectoid beings renowned for their intellect and cunning, were the first to make a move. The collective, who had dominated vast regions of space for millennia, saw humanity as an unpredictable force that had upended the natural order. They issued an ultimatum: surrender the artifact or face the consequences. "We'll never give it up," Cain said quietly to her council, determination clear in her voice. "This is humanity's chance to claim its place in the galaxy. No one will take that from us." But it wasn't just the Ventress who were watching. The Draconids, a fierce, dragon-like species with a reputation for their militaristic tendencies, had already begun mobilizing their fleet at the edge of the galaxy. They were known for their brutal, no-nonsense approach to warfare. The Draconids saw the humans as nothing more than a fledgling species ripe for conquest, and they were preparing to crush Earth under the weight of their armies. Meanwhile, in the shadow of these looming threats, humanity's military leaders convened. They understood what was at stake. What began as a single battle above Earth's atmosphere had transformed into a galactic chess game, with each empire moving pieces, testing humanity's resolve. The human warships were still relatively few, but they were stronger than ever. Their newfound weapons, powered by the artifact, had proven effective against the Tylocs. But could they hold up against the might of these new forces? Cain paced the bridge, her mind racing with options. We need to consolidate. Earth cannot stand alone if we're to survive the coming storm. She turned to her communications officer. Send a message to the Ventress Collective and the Draconids. Let them know Earth is no longer a helpless target. We won't bow to threats. If they want the artifact, they'll have to fight for it. As the message was broadcast, a chilling sense of finality settled over Cain. The galaxy had just learned the hard truth. Humanity would not be easily intimidated. The Ventress and the Draconids could either join humanity in a new galactic order or try to destroy them. Either way, the balance of power was shifting. But as the message went out, Cain couldn't shake the feeling that there were deeper forces at play, forces older than the Tylocs, the Ventress, or the Draconids. There was something about the artifact that still remained hidden, something even more dangerous than the weapons it had already revealed. And soon, the galaxy would learn that humanity had just unlocked the door to a new and terrifying reality. Humanity's defiance echoed across the galaxy, and the response was swift and unforgiving. The message had been sent, and the alien empires did not take kindly to the humans' declaration of independence. The Ventress Collective, long accustomed to manipulating weaker species through diplomacy and coercion, saw Earth's refusal to submit as an insult. The Draconids, on the other hand, were never ones for negotiation. They had always believed in strength, and humanity's unexpected resistance was a challenge they could not ignore. Within days of the broadcast, the first of many battles began. The Ventress Collective deployed their advanced war fleet, a terrifying armada of ships, each one a biomechanical marvel. These ships, part organic and part technological, were capable of self-repair and regeneration, making them difficult to destroy. The Draconids, more straightforward in their approach, unleashed a brutal wave of warships, sleek, massive, and armed with devastating firepower. The galaxy now saw the full scale of the two empires' wrath as they moved to teach humanity a lesson. Humanity's response was nothing short of audacious. Commander Cain knew Earth could not survive a prolonged war against both the Ventress and Draconids, especially with the artifact still holding so many secrets. The human fleet, though enhanced by the artifact's technology, was still outmatched. But there was one thing the alien forces underestimated: humanity's creativity and adaptability. In the vast, cold void of space, the first engagement between Earth's forces and the Ventress fleet was nothing short of spectacular. Cain had ordered a feint, a distraction. The human fleet, knowing they couldn't outgun the Ventress, used the terrain of nearby asteroid fields to their advantage. The human warships darted in and out of the asteroids, launching coordinated, high-speed strikes. The Ventress ships, accustomed to striking from a distance, were thrown off by the humans' unpredictable movements. Several smaller ships were disabled, their regeneration systems unable to handle the barrage of strikes. Despite their tactical success, the Ventress were not easily defeated. Their ships self-repaired and regrouped, forcing the human fleet to retreat, but the damage had been done. Earth's forces had proven they could hurt even the seemingly invincible collective. Meanwhile, the Draconid fleet moved into position, prepared to wipe Earth from existence. Their ships, designed for sheer power and brutality, carried massive weapons that could decimate entire fleets in a single shot. The Draconid commander, Sharth the Unyielding, was a towering figure known across the galaxy for his ruthlessness. He had no patience for weakness. He viewed humanity as nothing more than prey to be slaughtered. But Cain had prepared for this moment. The humans' knowledge of the artifact allowed them to push their technology to the limits. The Vanguard and its sister ships, now equipped with the relic's power, were far more advanced than anything the Draconids had faced before. In the midst of the battle, Cain deployed a risky strategy. She ordered a full-powered charge into the heart of the Draconid fleet, using the artifact's energy to generate a massive gravitational field, pulling the enemy ships into an inescapable vortex. The effect was devastating. Draconid ships, caught in the gravitational field, were torn apart by the immense forces. Sharth's flagship, the Doombringer, attempted to flee, but it was no match for the raw power of the human ships, now riding the energy of the artifact like a tidal wave. Yet, despite the victory, Cain knew the Draconids were not finished. They would return. Both the Ventress and the Draconids had tasted humanity's strength, and now they would come back with even more ferocity. The galaxy had become a battleground, and Earth had just taken its first steps into a much larger conflict. But as Cain surveyed the battlefield, the victory felt hollow. The humans had fought bravely, but they had only delayed the inevitable. With two powerful empires now locked in a deadly pursuit of Earth and its newfound technology, Cain realized the full extent of the war that had just begun. And far from the battlefront, there was a new player watching from the shadows, a figure whose ancient knowledge of the artifact could change everything. Humanity's war for survival was only just beginning. The battle had been won, but the cost was beginning to show. Earth's fleet, though victorious against the Draconids, had suffered substantial losses. The remaining warships were battered, their shields strained and hulls scarred by the ferocity of the battle. Commander Cain stood on the bridge of the Vanguard, watching the wreckage of the Draconid fleet drift slowly into the void. Their victory, while significant, had come at a price. Humanity had shown it could fight, but now the galaxy was taking notice, and it was coming for Earth. "We've bought ourselves some time," Cain said, her voice low as she addressed her command staff. "But it won't be enough. The Ventress will regroup and strike again. And the Draconids, they'll return with everything they have." Her eyes scanned the tactical screen, where the map of known space flickered, outlining the movements of both alien fleets as they retreated to their respective borders. It was clear that both empires were not prepared for the full-scale war humanity had just unleashed. Yet, in the shadows, more powerful forces stirred, forces that had long watched Earth from the safety of the galaxy's fringes. "We need allies," Cain said decisively. "The Ventress and Draconids will only be the beginning. If we're to survive this war, we must seek out others who stand against them." Cain's mind turned toward the artifact. It had powered humanity's victory in battle, but it was still an enigma. They had barely scratched the surface of its true capabilities. The more they learned, the more questions arose. The artifact was not merely a weapon. It was something far more complex, an ancient relic with knowledge that could shift the balance of power in the galaxy. But what if its creators were watching, or worse, what if they had left behind something more dangerous? Lieutenant Smith entered the bridge, his expression grim. "Commander, I've just received a transmission from the Outer Rim. It's encrypted, but it's clear someone is trying to make contact. It's not from any of the known empires." Cain's heart skipped. The signal was a mystery, one that could either be a blessing or a trap. She motioned for the message to be decrypted. A moment later, a holographic image flickered into view. It was a being unlike any Kane had ever seen. Tall, with a sleek, alien form that seemed to ripple with an aura of intelligence, the figure's skin shimmered with the faint glow of bioluminescence. Its voice was calm and measured, yet there was an underlying intensity to it. "I am Lyrakish, a representative of the Arcthi Coalition." The figure spoke, its tone unmistakably formal. "We have observed your actions, humanity, and we have seen the galaxy shift in ways that none of us expected." Kane's pulse quickened. The Arcthi were an ancient species, rumored to be the architects of some of the most powerful technologies in the galaxy. For them to make contact now, it could only mean one thing. The galaxy's powers were realigning, and humanity was at the center of it. "We have watched the growing conflict between your species and the Ventress and Draconids," Lyrakish continued. "Your victory over the Draconids was impressive, but this is only the beginning. The artifact you have uncovered is not merely a weapon. It is a key, a catalyst, capable of unlocking an ancient power that transcends the petty rivalries of your galaxy. The consequences of its use are unpredictable. We wish to help you." Kane exchanged a glance with Lieutenant Smithy. "Help us?" she echoed, disbelief creeping into her voice. "Why?" Lyrakesh's expression remained inscrutable. "Because the galaxy stands on the brink of a war that will reshape everything. We believe the artifact's creators were not of your galaxy. They were travelers, explorers, and in their search for knowledge, they unlocked forces that even they could not control. We have witnessed their downfall, and we fear that the same will happen to your species if you do not understand the full power of what you possess." The silence on the bridge was deafening. Kane felt the weight of the Arcthi's words settle over her. What had humanity awakened? And if they could not master the artifact, would they become the next victims of its power? "We will need time to discuss," Kane said, her voice firm. "But we are listening." Lyrakish inclined its head. "Time is a luxury you no longer have. The Ventress and Draconids are but a distraction. There is something far darker that stirs in the forgotten corners of the galaxy. We will aid you in unlocking the artifact's secrets, but you must act swiftly." The transmission ended, and the bridge was plunged into an uneasy silence. Kane stood, deep in thought, her fingers tracing the smooth surface of the artifact's holographic display. The galaxy was no longer just a playground for the empires. It was a battleground, and humanity had just been thrust into the heart of it. What choice did they have but to face it head-on? Commander Kane sat in the dimly lit war room of the Vanguard, the walls lined with tactical maps of the galaxy, stars flickering like distant fireflies. Her mind raced with the implications of the message from the Arcthi Coalition. A new player had entered the scene, and while the offer of assistance was tempting, the Arcthi were an enigma. What did they want in return? Could they be trusted? And what did they know about the artifact that humanity had yet to uncover? Beside her, Lieutenant Smith leaned over a holographic display, his face tense. "The Ventress and Draconid fleets are still regrouping, Commander. They'll be back in force soon enough. We need to act, but we're stretched thin. Our ships are damaged, and we don't even know the full extent of what the Arcthi can offer us." Kane exhaled, her fingers tapping the edge of the table in thought. "I know, but we don't have the luxury of time. That message, it wasn't just a warning. The Arcthi have knowledge about the artifact, and if there's even a fraction of what they say to be true, we need to learn everything we can. We can't afford to play this by ear anymore. We need to understand the power we're dealing with." Her voice softened, a rare vulnerability flickering across her face. "I don't know what's coming, Rayhan, but if we don't align ourselves with the Arcthi, we could be walking into something far worse than we can imagine." Smith nodded solemnly, turning to face the hologram of the Arcthi representative. "Lyrakish, you really think they'll help us without asking for something in return?" Kane didn't reply immediately, her gaze fixed on the shimmering image of the Arcthi. The alien's calm demeanor had masked an urgency in its tone, and despite their apparent willingness to assist, Kane couldn't shake the feeling that they knew far more than they were letting on. "We don't have a choice," she finally said. "The galaxy is bigger than our petty rivalries now. We need to know what's at stake, and I intend to find out what the Arcthi aren't telling us." Days later, the Vanguard slipped through the dark reaches of the galaxy, guided by coordinates provided by the Arcthi. The crew, still recovering from the grueling battles with the Draconids, moved with a sense of quiet determination. Earth's warships, still few in number, had never felt more alone in the vastness of space. Commander Kane stood at the front of the bridge, her eyes scanning the dark expanse of stars ahead. The Arcthi had promised to meet them at a remote system on the edge of known space, a location that had been abandoned by even the most daring explorers. It was here that they would attempt to unlock the full potential of the artifact, and hopefully discover the answers they so desperately needed. Approaching the rendezvous point, reported Lieutenant Smith, his voice steady. The tension was palpable as the crew braced themselves for what lay ahead. Suddenly, the silence was broken by the hum of the ship's communication system. A new transmission arrived, and this time it was not from the Arcthi. The signal was strange, encrypted, and undeniably urgent. Kane's eyes narrowed as the message began to play. "This is the Psylocks High Command." The voice crackled, distorted but unmistakable. "We've been monitoring your movements, humans. Know this, you have no future among the stars. Your pathetic attempts to claim the artifact will lead only to your extinction. Surrender it now, or we will annihilate your species." Kane's jaw clenched. The Psylocks, the very empire they had first thought defeated, had returned, and with them came the threat of total destruction. The Ventress and the Draconids were bad enough, but the Psylocks were relentless, their obsession with dominance unrivaled. They had lost one fleet, but their anger would surely know no bounds. "We've got incoming," Smith said, his fingers flying across the console as he monitored the galactic map. "Two fleets, moving fast. And they're not alone. There's something else in their wake." Kane turned to the crew, her resolve hardening. "Set a course for the Arcthi rendezvous point. Now." As the Vanguard surged forward, the ship's engines roaring to life, Kane couldn't shake the feeling of impending doom. The Psylocks weren't just coming to take the artifact. They were coming to end humanity's existence once and for all. She glanced toward the artifact, still locked in the center of the bridge, its strange hum a constant reminder that the power of the galaxy's fate rested in her hands. Just as the ship jumped into warp, Kane's communicator crackled again, this time with a message from the Arcthi. "Commander Kane, you are not alone. The Psylocks will come for you. But know this, they are not the only threat. Something worse is stirring, and the galaxy's fate may no longer rest in the hands of its empires. We must act quickly, or we will all fall." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving a tense silence in its wake. Kane's grip on the armrest tightened. She had thought the Arcthi were offering humanity a way to survive the war. But now, she wasn't so sure. The Vanguard shuddered as it tore through the folds of space, heading toward the Arcthi rendezvous point at full speed. Commander Kane stood at the bridge, her gaze locked on the starry void outside. The Psylocks' threat was real, and the urgency in their message had made it clear. Humanity had no time to waste. Yet, even as she pushed her ship to its limits, a nagging feeling of unease settled over her. The Arcthi's cryptic warnings lingered in her mind. Something worse was out there. Something more dangerous than the Psylocks, Ventress, and Draconids combined. As the ship entered the designated system, a new world materialized on the screens, a desolate, barren planet surrounded by a few scattered satellites. No signs of life, no ships in orbit. It was exactly what the Arcthi had promised, a neutral ground, a place to meet in secrecy. But something about the emptiness unsettled Kane. Approaching the coordinates, Smith reported, breaking the silence. "No sign of the Arcthi fleet yet. Should we hail them?" Kane hesitated. The calm, collected tone of the Arcthi still weighed heavily on her. There was no warmth in their offer of assistance, no promise of anything but knowledge, and in a galaxy at war, knowledge could be a double-edged sword. What did they expect from humanity? And why now? "Send the signal," Kane ordered, her voice firm. "But be ready. I don't trust this planet." A few moments passed before a low hum filled the air. The ship's communication system flickered to life, and the familiar form of Lyrakesh appeared on the holographic display. The Arcthi representative stood tall and regal, exuding a sense of calm that was at odds with the storm building outside the ship. "Commander Kane," Lyrakesh's voice echoed softly, "we have been expecting you." "We're here," Kane said bluntly, "but I don't see any of your fleet. Where are the rest of your people?" Lyrakesh's expression remained neutral. "We are but a few who have chosen to reveal ourselves. The rest of the Arcthi are cautious. There are things happening, things beyond our control. You must understand, Commander, the artifact you carry is not just a weapon. It is a key, a catalyst that may awaken an ancient force buried deep within this galaxy. And once awakened, it may not be contained." Kane's stomach tightened. "What do you mean, ancient force? And what is this key really?" Lyrakesh's eyes glowed faintly. The artifact was created by the first beings who ever traversed the stars. They were not from your galaxy, Commander. They came from a place beyond your comprehension, from a distant region that no longer exists. They sought knowledge, power, but in their greed, they unlocked something dark, something far older than even the Arcthi. The artifact is the last remnant of their civilization, and it is the only thing that can either stop or unleash the true threat. Kane's breath caught in her throat. "And you're telling me this now? After all the bloodshed?" Lyrakesh's voice softened. "We did not know that the artifact would be found. The humans were never supposed to be involved. But now you are. And you must make a choice. The galaxy is teetering on the brink of something catastrophic, and the Psylocks and others are only pawns in a much larger game." Before Kane could respond, the ship's sensors blared to life, interrupting the conversation. "Commander, we got incoming," Smith shouted, his face pale. "It's the Psylocks. They found us." Kane's heart sank as she watched the tactical screen flicker to life, revealing the unmistakable silhouettes of the Psylocks fleet, a massive, nightmarish array of ships, their dark hulls bristling with weapons. This was no small scout group. The Psylocks had come with everything they had. Lyrakesh's image flickered on the hologram, a look of resolve crossing their features. "The Psylocks will not stop until they have the artifact. You must act quickly, Commander Kane. The Arcthi have no intention of letting the galaxy fall into the hands of the Psylocks, or anyone else for that matter. The artifact is yours to command, but only if you truly understand its power." Kane's mind raced as the threat of the Psylocks loomed larger by the second. She could see them moving into position, their fleet spread across space like a predator closing in on its prey. The Vanguard was outgunned and outnumbered, but she wasn't about to let Earth fall without a fight. "Prepare for combat," Kane ordered, her voice cutting through the tension. "Get us to the surface of that planet. Now. We need to buy time, and we need to unlock whatever secrets the Arcthi are hiding." As the ship began its descent toward the barren planet, Kane's thoughts were a whirlwind. The Arcthi, the Psylocks, the artifact, everything was coming to a head. And the closer they got to the truth, the more she realized that the galaxy was on the edge of something far more dangerous than anyone had anticipated. The storm was here, and humanity was standing right in the eye of it. The Vanguard descended rapidly toward the barren planet's surface, its hull groaning under the strain of the atmosphere. Commander Kane's fingers tightened around the armrest as the ship's systems struggled to compensate for the turbulence. Outside, the planet's rocky surface came into focus, a desolate landscape of jagged mountains and cracked plains. The Psylocks fleet was fast approaching, and they would not wait for humanity to make its move. "Commander, we're almost there," Lieutenant Smith said, his voice steady but with a hint of strain. "We'll have to make landfall soon, or the Psylocks will catch up to us." Kane nodded, eyes fixed on the planet's surface. The Archthee had said the artifact was a key, one that could unlock something ancient, something far more powerful than the empires at war. The only problem was that they didn't know exactly what it would unlock. She had no choice but to trust the Archthee and hope they were right. If they weren't, humanity was walking into an even greater disaster. The ship touched down with a heavy jolt, its engines whirring to a stop. The landing zone was a small plateau, surrounded by cliffs on all sides. There was no sign of life, no movement, no other ships, but Kane had learned to trust her instincts. This planet was far from ordinary, and the presence of the artifact only heightened her wariness. "We're on the ground," Kane said, turning toward her crew. "Prepare for a reconnaissance team. We need to find the Archthee's base of operations." Smith nodded. "Understood. I'll assemble the team." As the doors to the Vanguard hissed open, Kane and a small group of officers stepped onto the planet's surface. The air was thin but breathable, though it carried a strange metallic scent, as if the very planet was waiting for something to happen. The team moved cautiously, their boots crunching against the rocky ground. They made their way toward an ancient structure that had been detected beneath the surface. It was large, made of dark stone, and covered in strange glyphs that none of them recognized. "This place is old," Lieutenant Rhea said, running her fingers along the engravings. "But it's not like anything we've seen before." Kane's pulse quickened. The Archthee had led them here for a reason. This was where the answers lay. As the group moved deeper into the structure, they found a large chamber at its heart. In the center was a pedestal, and atop it lay a crystalline object, the same shape as the artifact, but far larger. Its surface pulsed with an eerie, otherworldly glow. "This must be it," Kane whispered, stepping forward. "The source." Before anyone could move closer, the walls of the chamber trembled. The ground shook violently, and a booming voice echoed through the structure, one that seemed to come from the planet itself. "The key has been turned," the voice rumbled, deep and foreboding. "The galaxy will now face the reckoning of the first gods. Prepare for the awakening." The ground beneath their feet cracked open, and from the fissures emerged swirling shadows, dark energy that seemed to pulse with malevolent intent. Kane's heart raced. This was not just a weapon. This was something far worse than the Psylocks or any empire had ever encountered. Suddenly, a high-pitched screech filled the air as the Psylocks' fleet appeared in orbit above the planet. Their ships lined up, massive and menacing, and began to deploy forces. Kane's mind raced. They had to act. If the artifact had triggered something catastrophic, humanity needed to control it, or destroy it, before it was too late. The Archthee's warning echoed in her mind. "The galaxy stands at the edge of oblivion. You must decide. Control the power of the artifact, or perish with it." Kane clenched her fist. She wasn't going to let the Psylocks win. She wasn't going to let the galaxy fall into ruin.